Welcome back to my channel. Those of you who are new, my name is Ava Death Dolly, and today I'm going to tell a story. I may have already told this one. I'm not entirely sure. My brain gets a little foggy, and this is why I started this channel in the first place, so I could retell the stories that I've been telling for many years and share them while I still remember them, for they're lost forever, like everything I owned and that recently was lost in my storage. So, including a lot of my precious photographs and big art posters and everything else I collected over the years. A lot of goth and original Death Rock memorabilia just now gone. So all I have is my memory. So I'll share this one again. Whether you, and I apologize if I've told this before. I may have forgotten, but the subject was brought up again, and I can't help but crack up when I think about it. Okay, so here's the setting. This is back around maybe about 2001, 2002. All right. At this point, I was still friends with Tamlyn of London After Midnight, and Tamlyn was still engaged to be married to Tatiana. They'd been together for almost 10 years. And it was almost near the end of their relationship, and London After Midnight was going to be performing a show at the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Boulevard. If you've been to Hollywood, you know exactly what that is, and you also know that it has a upper balcony backstage area, so to speak, where bands will do a little R&R and what have you, and of course there's the upper bar up there. And so this is, I never really was a fan of this band because I kind of knew, I met Sean Brennan before Sean Brennan became Sean Brennan, and that first image of me meeting him, and he was like dressed in khakis and a brown polo, Izod, you know, I could never get that out of my head, and that was I was always gonna, you know, to me, it was always gonna play in my head every time he tried to act cool around me. And so, and then he knew it too, and that's probably why we never got along. So, well, I never hated the man, so to speak, and nor did I consider him a rival, but, you know, he didn't really have any love for me either. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that part. But there was a lot of contentious issues between Tamlyn and Sean Brennan at the time. And at this point, now, mind you, Tamlyn, me and him, we started being, you know, close friends shortly after Ross Williams died. So he kind of helped fill in a big gap in my life, and yeah, he became a very close friend. And during that time period, you know, he would tell me about his personal problems, you know, and one of them being that the big question that a lot of people ask me about, you know, is like, you know, was Tamlyn truly transgender, or you know, was Tamlyn really autistic, or, you know, what was the deal with Tamlyn? Well, Tamlyn, in his own words, would like to tell you back then that he was a Kleinfelter, and that's the way he'd say it, and his voice would get all kind of weird, and, you know, and forgive me for, you know, misused pronouns, but I didn't know Tamlyn as a girl. I didn't get to know that. And Tamlyn made it very clear to me that Tamlyn had absolutely no interest in becoming a girl at that time. In fact, Tamlyn made it very clear to me how afraid they were of needles and injections, and they watched me do my estradiol injections for 3.5 straight years before asking me for one. And the one time I said, okay, fine, you want to know what it's like? Okay, I'll give you an injection. I went ahead and shared my meds with him. And, you know, Tamlyn was like the biggest scaredy cat I'd ever seen, you know, when it came to a needle, you know. So, you know, I found it very troubling that someone else talked Tamlyn into going down a path that Tamlyn had assured me they had absolutely no interest in. So, but, you know, I was not the one to say no, you know, and I didn't encourage it. I did everything I could to discourage it, honestly, because I had suffered so much. I'd lost so much during that period of time. You know, my whole family pretty much rejected me. I was outcasted, and, you know, lost a lot of friends and people I thought were on my side, but at the same time, I gained some new ones and some unexpected allies. Ross Williams and Chaton Damone being one of the better ones, at least for a time. There was Julian Burrs too, lovely individual who I'm still happy to know is still out there and still remembers me, as well as Steve Skeletal, who's still very active on the scene. But getting back to Tamlyn. So, they were going to be playing this show at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And all the girlfriends were going to be there. It was going to be on a Sunday night, and it was a rather poorly attended show. It was like 30 people showed up. I mean, you hear about London After Midnight, and people talk about what legends they are and all that stuff. And the big numbers of people that show up to their shows in Mexico City, I mean, yeah, it's pretty impressive. I got to say, consider. Okay? They're popular elsewhere. It's kind of like, how REM or Dream Syndicate was popular elsewhere, not so much here. But anyway, so getting back to this show. Tamlyn informed me almost an hour before they were going to go on stage that Tamlyn wasn't going to be allowed to play the keyboards. Tamlyn was going to be requested to be up on stage, but not going to be allowed to play keyboards because Sean didn't trust him anymore. Why? Alluded to something regarding, the changes that Tamlyn would slowly start to undergo. See, we didn't have a word for it back then, but Tamlyn was slowly, I'd say, I wouldn't even really call it a true period, but it was I guess you could say was the beginning of what people today would call socially transitioning. And that often means you are going through this awkward stage without taking medicine. So, Tamlyn was starting to dress a little peculiar, and Sean wasn't having any of it. He was expected Tamlyn to show up in, black PVC and fishnets, the usual, Tamlyn of London After Midnight stuff you would expect to see. But Tamlyn decided to throw the whole thing for a loop by wearing this ridiculous pink fuzzy sweater thing over all this vinyl. And it was like a little bolero jacket, which totally threw the entire look off. And Sean was not happy whatsoever. I mean, no comments for the rest of the band. They just went ahead and, went upstage and they did the show, I hand it to the rest of the boys. They were very professional. I'll grant them that. But the fact that Sean was so fucking annoyed about this, and Sean was behind this whole shit of not letting Tamlyn actually play. I mean, Tamlyn basically told me he had to go up there and fake it. Really bugged the shit out of me. Me being his friend at the time, well, I took matters into my own hands. And Sean, if you're watching, well, you could have done better, but this is what you chose to do. So, what happened, okay, and well, getting back to the story. Anyway, so I'm there with the girlfriends of the band, with Tatiana, and I don't remember the other girls anymore, but, they're pretty drunk, because, they've been to quite a few of their shows, and out of nowhere, I'm looking at Tamlyn's looking kind of depressed and just going through the motions, and then I noticed that Sean's looking up at me for a second and giving me this look like, you see, I'm in charge kind of look, and then I looked at Tamlyn and I gave him this look like, oh yeah. And Tamlyn's like, no, don't do it. Next thing you know, I got all the girlfriends of the band. We decided we're going to start heckling the band from that moment on till the show ended. And the whole show, we're just like going, we want Roller Coaster of Love. The whole night we're like, roller coaster or love. Tell you what. We were so obnoxious, and Sean just kept looking up like, so mad. But it was priceless. But, again, I wouldn't have done it if there was like 10,000 people there. I wouldn't have done that to them. But there was practically nobody there, and people were kind of shit-faced, and, it just seemed like a funny prank to pull, and, it just kind of took a life of its own at that time, and it was a funny moment. And Tamlyn later didn't complain. So, Tamlyn just looked at me and just cracked up. Cracked up. And it was one of those memories I like to remember. We had some good times, and we had some really memorable moments, and it's unfortunate that things happened the way they did. And I like to remember these good moments, because, when people leave this earth, it's all you have of them, ultimately, and you keep them with you. So treasure the good moments with the friends you have while you have them, while they're still here, and if they're really that good of friends, always keep them in here, okay? This has been Ava Death Dolly, and this has been my true story for today. Take care, everyone. Love you all.